Imagine a world where silence ruled, a world where humans looked at one another with questioning eyes, where gestures and expressions were the only bridges between isolated minds. Long before civilization, before the first spark of fire, and even before the invention of words, our ancestors lived in a reality without language. This chapter takes us back thousands of years to the dawn of humanity without words. Rouse 1. The world before speech. In those early days, survival was the only goal. Small groups of early humans wandered through dense forests, vast grasslands, and dangerous valleys. But unlike us today, they had no spoken words to share knowledge, no language to pass instructions, and no names to call their loved ones. They relied only on the silent language of gestures, the movement of eyes, and the tilt of heads. When danger approached, a predator lurking in the shadows, or a storm gathering in the sky, they could not shout warnings as we do. Instead, they froze, pointed, and relied on instinctual understanding. Misunderstandings were frequent, often costing lives. A wrongly interpreted gesture could mean walking into danger rather than avoiding it. 2. The silent bond of gestures in place of words, humans used their bodies as tools of communication. A raised hand might mean stop. A pointed finger could mean look there. A widened pair of eyes expressed fear, while a smile, rare and fragile, suggested comfort. But even with these silent signs, communication was limited. How could they explain an idea as complex as, "Let's wait until night to hunt"? How could they describe the memory of where fruits grew or where water flowed? These thoughts, so natural to us with our words, were trapped inside their minds, unshared and unspoken. Yet despite these barriers, humanity endured. It was not words that kept them alive. It was cooperation, instinct, and the shared rhythm of survival. 3. Life in the tribe without words picture. A small tribe of 15 to 20 individuals, families, hunters, children, and elders. When hunger struck, they ventured out together, relying on silent teamwork. The leader raised his hand, and the hunters crouched. The group moved in unison, like shadows in the forest, communicating only through the flick of a wrist or the nod of a head. But when mistakes happened, frustration erupted. Without words, anger often turned into physical conflict. The inability to explain intentions or mistakes led to fights. What could have been resolved with a sentence, "I thought you meant to go left," instead ended in bruises and broken bonds. Children grew up watching and imitating these gestures. They learned by copying, not by being taught. A mother showed hunger by tapping her stomach. The child copied her. A father showed thirst by mimicking drinking. The child understood. 4. The silence of emotions. Perhaps the most powerful struggle of life without language was not survival, but emotions. Love, grief, joy, and fear. These deep human feelings had no words. Imagine a mother losing her child to sickness. She could not express her pain in words. She could only cry, scream, and hold the child's body. The tribe understood her sorrow not through sentences, but through the raw sounds of grief. In moments of happiness, laughter was the only universal sound. A successful hunt led to claps, smiles, and rhythmic sounds, but never to spoken congratulations. The absence of language meant emotions were experienced deeply, but alone. Each person lived in an isolated world of feelings, unable to truly share the weight of their heart. 5. The challenge of passing knowledge. The greatest limitation of a world without words was knowledge. Imagine discovering a fruit tree deep in the forest. Without language, how do you explain its location to your tribe? How do you warn them about poisonous berries? Knowledge passed only through imitation. A child watched an adult set a trap and copied it. A hunter followed another, hunter silently to learn. But when that adult died, their wisdom often died with them. There was no storytelling, no teaching, no written record. Humanity remained trapped, unable to grow beyond what each generation could physically show the next. This barrier held back progress for thousands of years. It kept humanity in survival mode, unable to dream of more. 6. The first hints of sound, and yet even in this silence, the seeds of language were planted. While gestures dominated, humans began experimenting with sounds. A grunt to show anger, a cry to warn danger, a hum to soothe a child. These were not words, but they were steps toward words. The tribe slowly realized that sounds could travel farther than gestures. A raised hand could stop the person in front of you, but a shout could stop someone 100 meters away. This discovery would one day change the fate of humanity forever. Before words, before sounds became symbols, the human body itself became the first tool of communication. In a world without speech, gestures were the earliest language. Hands, faces, eyes, and posture carried messages that words had not yet been invented to deliver. From warning signals to expressions of joy, the silent choreography of the human body told the stories of survival. This chapter explores how gestures shaped the first steps of human communication and laid the foundation for spoken language. 1. The birth of signs. Imagine a group of hunters standing at the edge of a forest. Ahead, a herd of animals grazes in silence. Speaking was impossible. They had no words, and even if they did, noise would give them away. So the leader raised his hand flat in the air. The group froze. He pointed 2 fingers toward the prey, then circled his hand to signal surround. The hunters understood. In this way, hands became the mouth of humanity. Each movement carried a message, sometimes clear, sometimes vague, but always essential. Without gestures, survival would have been nearly impossible. 2. Universal gestures. Some gestures became universal. A finger to the lips meant quiet. A hand raised high meant stop. Nodding showed agreement. Shaking the head meant refusal. These symbols, born from instinct, remain with us today, even though we now have words. Facial expressions added another layer. A smile meant safety, comfort, or joy. Wide eyes signaled fear or danger. Frowns showed disapproval. Humans discovered that faces could tell stories more powerfully than silence ever could. 3. Gestures in daily life. Gestures governed daily survival. When hunger struck, someone rubbed their stomach. When thirsty, they mimed drinking water. A hunter teaching his child would point at a bird, then mimic its wings with his hands. The child repeated, learning not with words, but with movement. Elders, too, became teachers through gesture. They showed how to sharpen stones, how to build shelters, how to prepare food, always by demonstration. The tribe became a living classroom, where every action was both lesson and language. 4. The power and limitations of gestures. Gestures allowed humans to cooperate, but they also created confusion. A pointing finger could mean look, but it could also mean go. A hand wave could mean stop, or it could mean danger. Without agreed rules, meaning shifted from moment to moment. During hunting, a mistaken gesture could destroy hours of effort. A wrong sign might send hunters left when they needed to go right, or signal attack too early. In some cases, misunderstandings were deadly. Despite these flaws, gestures gave humans their first sense of shared meaning. For the first time, thoughts could cross the gap from one mind to another, even if imperfectly. 5. Gestures and social bonds beyond survival. Gestures built emotional connections. In the absence of words like, "I love you" or "thank you," simple actions spoke volumes. A hand on the shoulder meant comfort. Holding hands signaled unity. A bowing head showed respect. Tribal rituals also relied on gestures. Raising hands to the sky during storms, kneeling before fire, clapping together in rhythm, all of these became symbolic languages of belief and culture. Even without words, humans found ways to express faith, hope, and gratitude through movement. 6. Gestures as the first stories. Long before words shaped myths and legends, gestures told the first stories. Around firelight, hunters reenacted battles with animals by mimicking claws, leaps, and struggles. Their audience understood the tale without a single word. Children laughed, women gasped, men nodded in recognition. These performances were more than entertainment. They were memory. They preserved events for the tribe. Gesture was the first archive, the first history book written not on stone or paper, but in the air with human hands. 7. The evolution toward speech. While gestures thrived, their limitations became clear. They required sight. One could not gesture to someone hidden in the dark. They required presence. Signals failed across distance. They lacked complexity. Abstract ideas like tomorrow or hope had no gesture. This pressure drove humans to search for new tools of communication. The body alone was not enough. From this need, sounds would soon rise to join gestures. Grunts, cries, and chants began to supplement movements, gradually creating a bridge toward spoken language. Imagine a silent forest at dusk, a sudden roar in the distance. A predator is near. One hunter lets out a sharp, guttural grunt. Instantly, the group reacts, their bodies tense. No words are spoken, yet the sound itself carries a warning. This was the power of sound. Unlike gestures, which required sight, sound could travel. It could be heard behind trees, across valleys, even in the dark. The human voice became an invisible thread connecting one person to another. 2. Sounds of emotion. Sounds first served emotions. A cry of pain told others that someone was hurt. A laugh echoed through the camp, spreading joy. A growl showed anger or frustration. Mothers hummed to calm their children, their soft tones carrying comfort long before words like hush or sleep existed. These raw sounds were instinctive, drawn from the body's natural reactions. They were not yet words, but they were meaningful. They revealed fear, sorrow, happiness, and desire in ways gestures alone could not. 3. Sounds in survival. For survival, sounds became crucial. Hunters mimicked animal calls to lure prey. They shouted to startle predators. During hunts, rhythmic grunts or claps kept groups moving in unison. At night, sharp cries echoed through valleys to call scattered tribe members back to camp. The tribe learned that sound could travel farther than the eye could see, making it a powerful tool of safety and coordination. 4. The first experiments with voice. As humans grew more curious, they began experimenting with sound. Repetition became a tool. A hunter might grunt twice to signal food, or a mother might hum a repeated note to calm a child. Over time, these repeated sounds began to form patterns, proto-symbols of meaning. Some tribes used chanting, simple, rhythmic noises repeated together. These chants bonded the group, creating shared rituals that deepened unity. What began as noise slowly became tradition, laying the seeds of cultural expression. 5. The limits of sound. Without words, but sounds like gestures had their limits. A grunt could mean many things: anger, warning, or frustration. Without consistency, confusion often followed. A cry could bring help, or it could cause panic. Unlike words, sounds alone lacked structure. They could express feelings, but not ideas. One could cry out for food, but not explain where it was found. One could grunt in anger, but not describe why. Humanity needed more than sound. It needed symbols that tied sound to meaning. 6. From noise to meaning. Despite these challenges, sound had opened a door that would never close. By combining gestures with noises, humans created richer forms of communication. A pointing hand and a grunt could together mean, "Look there." A clap and a cry could mean, "Danger now." This blending of gesture and sound was the turning point. It allowed more complex messages, more coordination, and more shared experiences. Slowly, humanity was moving closer to the invention of words. Survival is never easy. But imagine surviving without words. Imagine hunting, gathering, raising children, or facing danger with no shared language to explain, instruct, or plan. For our ancestors, this was the daily reality. Life without language was not just silent, it was dangerous, fragile, and often tragic. This chapter explores the challenges early humans faced in a world where communication was limited to gestures and sounds, and how miscommunication often meant the difference between life and death. 1. Misunderstandings in the hunting was vital for survival, yet it required precision. A wrong move could scare away prey, or worse, attract predators. Without words, hunters relied on gestures and grunts, but these signs were often vague. One hunter might point left, intending to signal "go left." Another might interpret it as "the animal is left." A mistimed gesture could send hunters rushing too soon, scattering the herd. Countless hunts ended in failure, not because of lack of skill, but because of lack of clear communication. 2. Danger in silence. Danger lurked everywhere. Lions in tall grass, snakes underfoot, storms in the distance. Warnings were critical, but without words, they were easily missed. A hand wave might mean stop, but in the panic of the moment, it could be misread. Sometimes the warning never reached the group at all. A person seeing danger in the dark could not shout specific instructions. They could only cry out, leaving others unsure whether to run, fight, or freeze. Silence, or the wrong sound, could cost lives. 3. Social conflicts. Even within the tribe, miscommunication caused conflict. Without language, frustration built quickly. A child reaching for food might be misunderstood as stealing. A gesture of help might be misread as aggression. Anger often replaced explanation. Where words today might solve disputes, "I was only trying to share." Early humans had only shouts, grimaces, or fists. Disagreements that could have been settled in minutes sometimes escalated into violence. 4. Struggles in teaching and learning. Passing knowledge was one of humanity's greatest challenges. Without language, a hunter who discovered a new trapping method could not describe it to others. He could only show it, and even then, details were often lost. Elders carried wisdom from years of survival, but much of it vanished with them when they died. Without spoken instruction, children learned slowly by watching and copying. Progress was limited. Innovation spread slowly, if at all. Humanity was trapped in a cycle of rediscovery. 5. The burden of emotions beyond survival. The lack of language weighed heavily on emotions. Grief, love, hope, and fear. All of these lived inside the human heart, but could not be expressed fully. A mother mourning her child could scream and cry, but she could not explain the depth of her sorrow. A man wanting to comfort her had no words of sympathy, only a touch on the shoulder. Families loved each other deeply, yet love remained unspoken. Joy was shared through laughter, but dreams and hopes remained locked inside. This silence created loneliness even within the tribe. Each person carried thoughts they could not share, burdens they could not explain. Humanity longed for a way to connect beyond gestures and sounds. 6. Limits of cooperation. Cooperation was the key to survival, but without language, it was fragile. Planning a hunt, organizing shelter, dividing food, all were done through trial and error. Imagine trying to build a shelter together. One person lifts a branch, another sets it down elsewhere. Without words like here or later, tasks became chaotic. Mistakes were common, resources wasted. The tribe survived, but progress was painfully slow. Without language, humanity could not build beyond the most basic cooperation. Out of silence and out of struggle came the first sparks of something new. Humans had lived for ages with gestures and raw sounds, but now they began to shape these noises into patterns. This was the dawn of proto-language, the fragile beginning of true speech. One repetition becomes meaning. The first step toward language was repetition. Early humans noticed that repeating the same sound could create recognition. A hunter might grunt twice when food was found. A mother might hum a certain tone every night to comfort her child. Over time, these repeated sounds gained meaning. They were not yet words, but they were more than noise. They were the earliest symbols, sounds tied to shared understanding. 2. Mimicking nature, humans also borrowed from nature. They copied the roar of animals, the cry of birds, the rumble of thunder. By imitating these sounds, they pointed to the world around them. A hiss might mean snake. A growl might warn of a predator. Nature itself became the first teacher of language, offering a library of sounds to be shaped into meaning. 3. Sounds as signals sounds began to supplement gestures. A raised hand combined with a sharp cry might mean stop now. A pointing finger and a rhythmic grunt might mean look there. By blending body and voice, humans unlocked richer communication. Messages could be clearer, more specific. Coordination improved, and survival grew stronger. 4. Cave symbols and sound. At the same time, humans began marking caves with simple symbols, lines, dots, shapes. These were not writing as we know it, but they were memory aids. A sound might be tied to a mark. Together, sound and symbol carried meaning further than ever before. This was humanity's first attempt to preserve thought outside the body, to leave behind traces of memory. 5. The rise of ritual. Chants groups began chanting simple sounds together. These chants had rhythm, repetition, and power. They bonded the tribe, gave comfort during hardship, and created identity. What began as noise became tradition. A chant before the hunt, a chant for fire, a chant for mourning. These rituals gave the tribe unity, turning sound into culture. 6. The bridge toward words proto-language was fragile and limited. Its sounds were simple, its meanings unstable, yet it was revolutionary. For the first time, humans could agree on signals that lasted beyond the moment. This was the bridge. From grunts and cries, humans were moving toward consistent, shared sounds. Sounds that would eventually become words. Words that would shape history. For thousands of years, humanity lived in silence, relying on gestures, cries, and simple sounds. But then, something extraordinary happened. The scattered sparks of communication, gestures, noises, and chants began to merge into something greater. Consistent sounds became words. Words built sentences, and sentences carried ideas across time and space. This was the birth of true language. 1. The first words. No one knows the exact first word ever spoken, but we can imagine its power. A sound tied not just to an object, but to shared meaning. Perhaps it was a sound for water or fire, or food. For the first time, a sound could represent something real, and everyone in the tribe understood it. The moment a sound became a word, thought escaped the prison of silence. Humans could now share the invisible, ideas, instructions, and dreams. 2. Naming the world. With the first words came the ability to name. Trees, rivers, animals, stars, all could now be given sounds that defined them. Naming gave humans control. It turned the unknown into the known. More importantly, names gave identity. A mother could call her child, a leader could call his tribe. For the first time, individuals were recognized not just by sight, but by voice. 3. Planning and cooperation language transformed survival. Hunters could now plan before the hunt. Words allowed strategies, timing, and roles to be explained. You go left, I go right. What was once chaos became coordination. Shelters could be built with instruction. Food could be stored with explanation. Danger could be described instead of only signaled. With words, humanity stepped out of mere reaction and into planning. 4. The birth of stories words also unlocked memory. Around fires, elders spoke of past hunts, of victories and losses, of spirits and stars. Stories carried knowledge across generations. Children no longer had to rediscover everything by themselves. They inherited wisdom through language. Storytelling also created imagination. Myths, legends, and dreams filled human minds with more than survival. They created culture, belief, and identity. 5. Language and emotion. For the first time, emotions could be shared with depth. Love could be spoken. Gratitude could be expressed. Grief could be explained, not just shown. The loneliness of silence began to fade. Words allowed humans to connect heart to heart. The phrase, "I miss you" or "I love you" gave voice to what had been hidden for centuries. Language became not only a tool of survival, but also of intimacy. 6. The dawn of civilization, language was the key that unlocked everything to come. With words, humans built laws, religions, songs, and knowledge. They organized tribes into societies, societies into nations. From a single repeated sound to the poetry of civilizations, language became humanity's greatest invention. It gave us power over the world and over time itself by carrying memory into the future.